Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call the regular meeting of the Ashland Planning Commission to order for April 9th, 2024. The Planning Commission is conducting in-person regular meetings. However, the ability to participate electronically is continuing. These meetings are via Zoom pursuant to state law. Thank you. The public can find information on how to participate in Planning Commission meetings in our public notices. Directions on how to find the full meeting materials, applications, and staff reports are on the city's website and are also included in our public notices. I do note that we have a quorum of 7 commissioners, one of whom is by Zoom. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how to get that projected on the screen. It doesn't appear to be key to either of my screens here.
I can see Russell on that screen.
Oh, okay.
It's not projected to that screen. This is our new and improved system.
Well, it looks like
That is,
it's the same as that.
So it's
Anything changed?
I mean, I think that's tied to the laptop, not to me. So that's changed.
so Russell, can you hear us? So we can't hear him. Can you turn on the audio on that?
Russell, can you hear us? Okay, go ahead and try that again, Russell.
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
We can hear you barely. You're not coming through the normal audio, just coming through the computer. Yep. You can't hear him? Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a choice
right.
of one or the other.
Oh, okay.
Russell, can you talk again? I'm not hearing this audio.
No.
So now we really have 7 commissioners. Hi, Russell. Okay, let's move to announcements. Brandon?
So the city council chambers has been upgraded with new audio video equipment. And I'll remind myself, in order to utilize it, just as a quick orientation, the red means on. So you have to push the button when you speak, and after you stop speaking for a moment, it may go off. So it's good for any of the public speakers as well as staff and commissioners to recognize to push that to be recorded as it's necessary. Additionally, in terms of city council, I wanted to note that city council is having its annual planning session this Friday from 9 to 3 at the Ashland Hills Inn. And in terms of community development, on April 16th, we will be going to the city council with three items, all of which relate to the housing program, the award of housing trust funds, community development block grants, and social service funds. So that's next on the agenda for the 16th of April to award city funding and community development block grant funding to eligible projects. So those are the 2 announcements I have. And one other announcement to note is we got confirmation back from the Transportation Commission and the Public Works Director that unfortunately they're unable to attend our April meeting and have requested to have the transportation element and comp plan discussion in your study session in May.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, so we're moving on to the consent agenda. We have approval of minutes for February 27th study session, for the March 12th regular session, for the March 26th study session. Does any commissioner wish to offer a motion?
Can I clarify whether or not and this is not an issue, but a question I have on total page number 62, which is page 8 of the April 9th meeting, but it's regarding the recommended action for what we talked about at our last session. And is that part of the consent agenda, or is that a separate action?
Let me find out where you are. 68.
That's under,
Approval of findings for that action.
okay, so it's not the okay. I'm good then, thank you.
Okay, would you like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would love to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Outstanding. Is there a second? Russell seconds, okay. A second from Zoom. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, they're approved. Now we're moving on to public forum. If you wish to speak on an issue or item that's not on the agenda, please fill out the speaker request forms, which used to be pink, but are now, have a nifty little Ashland symbol on them, and they're in the back there. And you'll be recognized by the chair to provide your public comments. Is he want? What does he want?
I believe that's a great question. I think go ask him.
Okay. Okay, seeing no one to come forward for,
It's on the planning action as well.
thank you, thank you. Seeing that no one wants to talk to us on any other issues beside what we have on the agenda, we will move on to unfinished business. And that's the approval of findings for the concurrent outline and final plan for a 5-lot performance standards option PSO subdivision with a variance and an exception to street standards and a tree removal permit at 210 Alicia Avenue. It's action PA-T2-2024-00046.
I'd like to move to approve the findings.
In a second?
I would like to ask a clarifying question on the packet.
Okay,
So-
we need a second before we can discuss.
Okay.
You want a second?
I'll second the motion in order to discuss.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, excellent. Do you have a question?
I do. So my question is with regard to total page number 62. It's section 3, paragraph 3.12. And as written, it says that the private drive shall have a 6-foot buffer with a 6-inch curb. I thought that the overall dimension was 7 foot, and that then when we subtract the 6-inch curb,
It's a six-
that really it would be a 6-foot, 6-inch buffer. And if my memory is correct, I'd like that amended.
That's correct from my memory too. Thanks for catching it.
So 6.5 feet of buffer and a half foot
It's
for,
a 7-foot total from face of curb to fence.
okay, so the curb is outside the 7 feet.
No. Curb included in the 7 feet.
Okay.
And so the recommended administrative adjustment would be just to add the words 6-inch right after 6 foot. So we'll have a 6 foot, 6-inch buffer with a 6-inch curb. And then that would take care of it.
Okay.
And that was my only question.
And Commissioner McCracken-Jan, do you have a question?
Yes. But also would point out that those dimensions are reflected on page 22.
The 6 foot or the 6.5?
6.5. Well, it's a little vague. It says 6.5-inch buffer and 6-inch curb,
Okay, then it's
which I
not,
believe is the same intent. But
Yeah.
we should be consistent, I guess. My question, which is, I guess, for the planning team, and goes back to my concern last time around. Is there a definition or what constitutes pedestrian friendly? Because to me, those are nice sounding words, but I don't know exactly what they mean in this context, and I believe it opens a slippery slope.
I was looking for the condition. Do you know which number it is?
Yeah,
So the, so the Planning Commission did address wanting to ensure that there's pedestrian access on that driveway so that it wouldn't be sharing the vehicle lane. And it wasn't defined at the Planning Commission, but our definition, and again, we don't have a definition for pedestrian friendly, but we did include as the condition to address safe pedestrian access, the applicant shall provide a modified civil plan that includes an at-grade change in materials, concrete, within the 20-foot improvement to provide pedestrian access that will support accessibility as well as fire truck apparatus. The intention there being that it could be asphalt for, 15 feet and then 5 feet of concrete to clarify for the applicant that a gravel path that was not wheelchair accessible would not constitute safe pedestrian access.
And that it would also be at a different grade, so it wasn't basically a street extension.
Essentially under this provision, unless the commission wanted to make a modification, it would be an at-grade
Okay.
change in materials so that a fire truck could, at 20 feet wide, staging could use both the at-grade concrete sidewalk and the asphalt.
So, just for historic sake, that treatment has been used a few times in really quiet, because this will be a pretty quiet street, and it seems to work really well. Just identifying a place for people to walk, and the drivers seem to get that too. Just in case you haven't seen that yet.
Okay, that's helpful.
And I like the expanded, in essence, definition that you provided, and I like it being at grade.
And Chair, if I can weigh in, I thought staff's summary of that condition captured well what I was trying to accomplish with that piece of the conversation, which is even though we're not changing the grade, we are indicating a separate space there that will hopefully serve a similar purpose.
And it could be on either side of the street.
Yeah, it doesn't stipulate in the condition. Yeah, so the way I heard it, the motion was made to approve, then there was a clarifying question, but not an amendment to modify condition number 2 to have a private drive that shall be 6.5 foot, private drive shall have a 6.5 foot buffer with a 6-inch curb from the property to the west, and then that being seconded.
I would move that we make an administrative adjustment that adds the 6-inch clarifier as distributed to staff. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, so, we're gonna vote on the amendment first. Michael, will you do a roll call?
Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Nauer.
Yes.
Commissioner Kincairn.
Yes.
Commissioner Herron.
Yes.
Commissioner Perkinson.
Yes?
Commissioner McCracken Jane. Chair
Yes.
Werner.
Yes. Okay, now let's vote on the amended motion. Again, Michael, will you do a roll call?
Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Nauer.
Yes.
Commissioner Kincairn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we have moved, seconded, and voted to approve the conditions, and that is it for that issue. Okay, next on our agenda is we have a type 2 public hearing. In type 2 public hearings, decisions are made by the planning commission after a public hearing. The decision may be appealed to the city council. This is planning action PA-T2-2024-00047, an application for a 4-lot subdivision for 4 single-family residential homes in an employment zone as deed restricted affordable housing under Oregon Revised Statutes, ORS 197.308. The owner is several DeBoer Trusts on behalf of Habitat for Humanity, and the applicant is Rogue Planning Development Services. The comprehensive plan designation is employment. The zoning is E1. Assessor's map is 39-1E04DC, and it's tax lot 3630. Before we begin the public hearing, I will ask commissioners if they've had any ex parte contact or done any site visits. So we'll start with Commissioner McCracken Jane.
No.
For both of them.
No for both.
Thank you. Commissioner Perkinson.
No for both.
Thank you. Commissioner Herron.
No site visit, no ex parte.
Thank you. Commissioner Kincairn.
Years ago, I looked at the potential of developing that lot, so I know it, but I have no conflict of interest, and I haven't done a current site visit.
Thank you. Commissioner Nauer.
Site visit, no ex parte.
Thank you. And I've done the site visit, but no ex parte. So I'm not aware of any challenges for bias or prejudgment, personal interest. I will now open the public hearing, and I will recognize the comment letter that we received.
Commissioner Werner. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Commissioner Phillips as well.
Oh,
Needs to
sorry.
disclose ex
Sorry,
parte.
Russell, sorry. I wasn't seeing you, so. I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Oh, yes, no ex parte, no site.
Ah, thank you. Okay. So I will now open the public hearing, and I will recognize that we have received a letter from Brooke Clifford, and we'll add the comment letter to the public hearing record. Aaron, do you want to go ahead and make the staff report?
Absolutely. Good evening, Planning Commission. Chair Werner, pleasure to be before you again. As you summarized, the application is for a 4-lot preliminary plat approval and residential site design review for 2 shared wall townhomes. This is the location in the larger city, so it's kind of in the northeast corner of the railroad, the north side of the railroad, if you will. This is a slightly closer view of the zoning with Williamson Way running east to west, and Rogue Place right here in the intersection, that is the subject property. The vintage of the subdivisions, Rogue Ridge Place was subdivided in 99. I believe the planning approval was in 97, and there was a delay between the approval and the subdivision. And then you can see the other years of the surrounding subdivisions. Falcon Heights was subdivided in 2005, and while it's not entirely built out, all of the utilities are entirely installed, which we'll discuss further. This is the subdivision of the first phase of Park Ridge Place. So you can see that it was, the subject property was dedicated in the process of that subdivision approval. This is the subject property from overhead with our near map. You can see that it's vacant. The curb is installed, but no sidewalk. And basically, the core of this application is based on a change in state law that requires affordable housing to be allowed in employment zones. Typically, we only allow residential development in the employment zone where there's a residential overlay. In this case, there is no residential overlay. But again, the change in state statute says that a local government shall allow affordable housing and may not require a zone change or a conditional use permit for affordable housing. As used in this section of the code, affordable housing is defined here. In this case, it's proposed to be 80% AMI, area median income. This is the subject property. As you can see, the curb line is in. These parking bays were dedicated when the subdivision was created, and the applicant includes the installation of new sidewalk. This graphic, it was pointed out that the exhibit actually shows the texture that's being used for sidewalk is asphalt as opposed to the concrete pattern, which is here. The city standards for sidewalk do require it to be concrete, and so that was simply an error in the drafting. In terms of the lot size, it is 0.3 acres. If the residential overlay were present, the density allowed would be 15 per acre, which would be 4.5. The proposed 4 is less than 4.5, and it's worth pointing out that there's both opportunities for density bonus in this change in state law and also in our local code, and there's no application for density bonuses, so it's within the allowed density if it were to have the residential overlay. These are the approval criteria for a subdivision plat, preliminary subdivision plat. One thing I would point out to this is a little bit different than what the Planning Commission sees most of the time. What is most frequently before you are performance standard subdivisions that goes through final plan and outline plan. There's a standard subdivision process as well, and it's slightly different. And so this is the preliminary plat criteria, and then they still have to come back for final plat. So it is a little bit different in terms of the approval criteria that are applied as compared to a PSO overlay. The project does require site design review. That is because we require site design review for townhome style housing in any zone. In the present application, they're proposing 2 buildings that will have a total of 4 dwellings, 2 in each, shared a common wall. And at the risk of not taking all of the thunder from the applicant's presentation, I've only included these 2 renderings. This is showing the backside with the common driveway to each of the 4 garages, and you can see the 2 separate homes. These are the approval criteria for site design review. They basically invoke other sections of the code. These have been gone through in detail in the findings that are prepared. There is a deferred landscape plan. There's a condition of approval that is going to require that with submittal of the building permit applications. And when the Tree Management Advisory Committee reviewed the application, they recommended Zelkova and/or red oaks along Williamson and suggested that eastern redwood and dogwoods would be appropriate along Rogue Place. Rather than include a staff report and then bring findings back to you at another time, we prepared findings in anticipation of potential approval this evening. There have been a few light edits from what was in the packet, and I do want to go through those. In section 2.5.4, which deals with adjacent development, it was brought up that those vacant properties to the south have not been built out yet, so this paragraph has been slightly edited to discuss the fact that they're subdivided and have the associated utilities installed, and come to the conclusion that the applicant doesn't prevent future development from occurring. Under 2.5.5, it was brought up that there is a conceptual storm drains detention system that is shown across multiple lots, and so this language has been slightly added to require a maintenance agreement to ensure that those common improvements are able to be maintained. And then lastly, with regard to pedestrian connectivity, I'm not quite sure how it got missed, but none of the plans actually demonstrate a sidewalk connecting from the houses to the sidewalk, which is a condition or is a standard in 18.4. And so this was edited slightly to include the requirement of a 5-foot pedestrian connection from each building to the sidewalk. And then I have additional slides on procedure if there's any need for that, but I'm more than happy to take any questions that you may have.
Does any commissioner have any questions of staff?
No, those edits took care of my questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Amy Gunter, Rogue Planning and Development Services, and I'm not only here as a representative of my business, but I am also on the board of Habitat for Humanity. So I represent them as well. Denise James, the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity, is on the phone. She's in Minneapolis for a conference. And this is Elijah Jordan from KSW, who has so kindly donated their architectural services to the designs of these buildings. Thank you for the comprehensive staff report. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over the location of the project or the zoning or any of those details because staff went through that information pretty comprehensively. Let's just get to the design. So the proposals for a 4-lot subdivision to allow for the construction of 4 residential dwelling units. The 4 units are attached in duplex groups. The proposed units are deed-restricted affordable housing units for the ownership to families with incomes of 80% or less of the area median income. And this is allowed, as noted in the staff presentation, through state law changes and Oregon Revised Statute change to RS 197380, which allows for affordable housing in employment and commercial zones. So each lot has frontage upon Williamson Way with a shared driveway accessing the rear loading garages from Rogue Place at the rear of the property. The proposed private driveway will provide access here through the existing curb. There's a new public pedestrian sidewalk along the frontage of the property. And then a street light at the intersection. It's not really discussed in any of the drawings yet, but typically a commercial Sternberg light is required in commercial zones. But because this is adjacent to residential, I would propose a residential hanger light versus the standard Sternberg. I don't believe there's any ordinance stuff that talks about it. It's sort of a policy thing. And so we'll talk with staff about how to blend that street light type as to what's appropriate with this neighborhood. There will be street trees planted in accordance with the recommended street tree guide and the spacing standards. They'll be planted behind the sidewalk, and they're not shown in the exact locations on any of the site plans because it's dictated upon where the power poles are, street lights are, sidewalks are, stop signs, any street notifications for parking bays, that sort of thing. But they will meet the spacing standard, which is generally 1 per 30 feet of frontage along both street frontages. The driveway has a screening fence existing along the south property line, and the driveway grade coming off of Rogue Place essentially determined the grade of the garages, which determined the grade of the finished floors, which determined the front porches. So in your packet, the drawings show the topography, but they don't exactly graphically represent the approximate 8% slope from one end of this site to the other. If you went there and saw that, you would not notice it was 8% slope till you start working on the engineering. So what has changed since your site plan are all very minor edits, and we believe that they're good edits, and they are, I believe, consistent with some of the concerns and not necessarily issues, but some of the concerns that were raised by the neighbors. I've had discussion with Ms. Clifford, who's sort of a neighborhood representative, and some of those changes were incorporated. So I'm going to go through the changes right now, and you have these in front of you. So the civil drainage plan in your packet, drainage and grading plan, it's civil sheet C4, and originally included a below ground and catch basin system here across the front, which then the paths leading out to the street would have had to cross this minor swale. It's not a big swale, it's maybe a 4-inch depression, so it's really minor, but they still would have had to cross it. So the proposal is that this can be shifted and placed between these two units. That allows all of these buildings to move forward about 5 feet, which puts them in line with the adjacent property to the to the east. So the engineering plans, the civil engineering plans have not all been modified because it's a big change, but the site plan that I provided you shows the shift forward and shows that modified setback, and that's the site plan you have with you this evening in front of you that was just delivered. As I said, it reduces the front yard setback by approximately 5 feet and moves the swale. The swale will now be here in the middle. This also details the paths leading from each porch out to the public sidewalk. The stairs on your sheet in the upper right-hand corner, it talks about how many risers and how many stairs will be there. They're not like house stairs, they're at-grade landscape stairs, so they're more smooth, more gradual. It's not going to be like a climb, but there will be rails right to the side of those stairs. That's what these lines are reflecting. So where there was a swale, we were able to scoot forward about 5 feet and now have those paths with the stairs incorporated getting down to the sidewalk.
And I'd like to mention one thing is that when the homes, the duplexes were back, the grade change is like 6 feet. As they go forward, it drops down to 4. So it helps with that relationship to the sidewalk.
The buildings essentially shift lower to the street instead of being really high above the street. So they are more similar to what's happening in the other homes in the neighborhood that have a little bit of a small retaining wall along their sidewalks or so forth. So that's the one change to the site plan. So it shifts forward. The civil drawings will show the new swale here. The next drawing, so this doesn't reflect the colors that are in your packet. The buildings will be painted, each building will be one color, most likely similar to the elevations in your packet with the like robin's egg blue and then a beige color. The colors will be consistent with natural earth tones, similar to the palette that's used within that adjacent residential subdivision. So, each unit is proposed to be 1,293 square feet in area with 622 square feet of living area on the main floor and 671 square feet on the second floor. Each structure has an attached 306 square foot rear-loaded garage, and the footprint of each unit is 1,599 with a total of each building of around 3,200. So the design of the units was taken largely from the existing development pattern of the neighborhood. And using architectural treatments and features, the setback, horizontal siding on the ground floor, a shingle-type siding on the second floor, a belly band, corbels, single-hung windows, transoms, and front porches. This top elevation is what's in your packet for what the buildings look like. The main change is that the most typical roof pitch in the neighborhood is a 4 and 12, so the roof pitch got changed to 4 and 12. That's, the top is 3 and 12, bottom 4 and 12. Building B, the internal one, this had a long hipped roof on the porch, which made it like one shared porch. If you go back to your site plan page, you'll see the porches are all now individual structures, and these are hipped roofs over an individual porch versus one solid porch across the front. So it breaks up the mass of the building, makes it clear that unit, less of a duplex, more of a townhome look, and then the windows were changed to be similar to what's in the neighborhood, and it's not a term I like to use, but it's very important in Habitat Homes is value engineering. They know what kind of windows they get donated to them. They know the sizes, the dimensions, and the revised drawing reflects what Habitat consistently uses. A big change that was recommended by the neighborhood is that they all have slats along their front porches, and so we incorporated slats along the front porch. Though it's not a building code requirement, it makes the houses look like all the other houses in that neighborhood, and it really creates a private space for those porches so they're not so exposed to the street. And then, yeah, we think that these changes, though they're really minor, they really do improve the overall design of the building and really make it, it's only about a foot taller, but it's a huge difference in how they look and how they orient to the street. So top picture is in the packet, bottom picture is revised elevation. Let's see. Same thing here. This is your, the change is transom window, and this upper window went away due to where a bed would go in that room. Door change, and then the stairs were added because now we know where they are based on the engineering. Same thing here, application elevation, change, it's a door, a little slight roof pitch, window types, this window went away, this, and then you have the stairs. The rears really didn't change much at all. The garage got, I think, 1 foot wider.
Yeah.
Each
it's like
garage,
8 foot door.
each garage got 1 foot wider, so it's more functional. The trash recycling closure areas are intended to go within that garage, so having a 13-foot garage makes more sense than a 10, 12-foot garage. Okay, so in conclusion, it's not a performance standard subdivision, so ignore that text, but we believe that this proposal complies with the criteria for a standard subdivision, outline and final plan, and site design review criteria for a residential development. All proposed lots, dimensions exceed minimum lot size in the E1 zone, which really doesn't exist. It exceeds all setbacks in the E1 zone. We matched residential setbacks where there really are no setbacks in the E1 zone. We went with the residential setbacks of the neighborhood, so it was consistent. The proposed development provides much needed housing. The porches, roof pitches, materials, and design are reflective of adjacent established residential neighborhood, and comprehensive plan goals and policies are met from housing element, public services, urbanization, and this furthers all of those goals with the development of a long vacant lot with deed restricted for purchase affordable housing for Habitat for Humanity. Thank you. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Hey, quick question. Hey, quick question. It looks like on the revised drawings, you moved the garage the man door in the garage to the side of the garage. Is there going to be a sidewalk to get from that man door to the back of the property? Because I didn't see it in the drawings.
It's a covered balcony. It's a covered balcony. We haven't provided the updated floor plan.
No, we don't have a modified
not
floor
on here.
plan.
But you can see it's stuck on each unit, the little ear that drops on each unit on the site plan there. That's actually like a 15-foot long covered space in the back. So essentially from the backyard, they have access to the inside of the house, yeah.
It's like a covered back entry with the side man door.
Okay.
And then this is the concrete step
Where
that
it comes out.
connects it to the asphalt driveway.
And so where is the backyard? The individual private backyard?
So there's not really individual yards that are of any spacious area because of the lot layout. Really, it's their functional outdoor space will be their front porches and the side yards, and then there's just small areas for yard area.
Okay. So there's a fence around,
There's a fence
Along this
here,
existing.
and then there's a fence here that will, I believe it stops at about their garage, and so we were proposing to extend it to, we can't go to our property line because the property line's in the sidewalk, but essentially to the edge of the sidewalk. And then, though there were fences on some of the site plans, there's not a fence plan at this point to like go around the units or anything. If there are, I think I put in the findings, if there are fences proposed, they'll comply with the fence ordinance and the heights expressed for setbacks in front yards, rear yards, and side yards. So I sort of adopted the residential standards for heights of fences with the layout. Instead of E1 zone, you can do 6 feet, but that's not the proposal. It would be consistent with residential as per the findings.
okay, so as you're proposing it tonight, there's no fence along Williamson or Rogue Place?
That is correct. And in speaking with the neighbors, their CCNRs, they don't have an active HOA, but their CCNRs actually do not allow fences in their front yards. We just aren't proposing them primarily because of our topography issues. The fence will be below the yard.
Okay. And one question on the storm detention pond,
Yeah,
or the storm detention facility. It's between the two buildings. and
right.
it's-
So the
it's-
original drawing showed it in the front, across the front.
Right.
And now it will shift to the side. And because of the limited amount of impervious and other things, they were able to reduce it in size and type to be an above-ground swale versus a catch basin type of system. And so they can, it will be moved in the civil drawings. And then I believe in my findings, I speak to like a management agreement. There's not a formal, like HOA for these, but there will be maintenance agreements and management agreements for maintenance of the park rows, the driveways, the bioswale, or the storm drain swale, that sort of thing. So all the common type of elements will be addressed through, I don't know the exact term that Habitat uses, but they're essentially like a maintenance management agreement for how they use the.
And that's between the 4 units?
Correct.
I want to put out one quick thing on the site plan. This is a unique lot because it's the corner block. And so a lot of the other houses that are really, really nice little houses in the neighborhood, they all have front-loaded garages, a lot of them don't. So it's, I mean, that is the one advantage this one has. You can have, the frontage is all balconies and patios with the rear garage. Yeah, they don't have a backyard to socialize in, but at least the frontage doesn't have the big garage doors, so
That's much better. Go ahead.
Do you know how deep and wide that swale has to be between the houses?
We haven't heard back. Todd Powell is our civil engineer, and yeah, as we've gone through the process, it's 12 feet of width between the units. It's very long, and instead of putting that dog-ear fence between them and it gets all the dark spaces, what we'd like to do is use that as the swell, have it lush with landscape. But he hasn't given us any specific.
I'm curious. I'm not, saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. it seems, thinking about having two two-story buildings 12 feet apart, which is 12 feet, but it's still tight, and then having a swale, and if it's, I mean, it could be a really nice design element, or it could be really bad. So,
Please make it
It
good.
has to,
I don't have a recommendation.
it has to do its job.
Well, it has to do its job, but also, like in the wintertime, you could end up just with a mud slick if it's, and this is just an interesting problem. I don't need, I'm sorry, I'm just babbling.
I think it's a good point, and I think even in our office, we're kind of curious, because, well, we have the two stem walls and the footings there. And, yeah, but we feel like there's enough tools that the civil engineer will have to be able to handle the seasons and the amount of.
Well, he doesn't really handle all of the aesthetics of it, but and then the other thing, well, I know he'll do a good job. It's not questioning that. It's just, it's a potentially interesting design problem.
Right.
That's all.
Yes.
And as part of the reason why the landscaping is deferred in this case primarily is that Habitat gets the landscaping provided for them on the end. And so that's why we don't have a design, but we'll definitely address like the street trees, and then this swale area will be specifically called out, because I'm assuming there'll be like lawn area for the rest of it, but we'll make sure that the landscaping plan addresses that swale and like what the treatments of it will be.
Well, RVSS is still kind of
Yeah.
controlling that,
Yeah.
so, yeah. Okay.
Susan, go ahead.
You mentioned that the homes would move forward 5 feet. Can you describe what then happened on the driveway side? Because I can't really tell from these.
Oh, as far
drawings.
as the driveways to the units themselves got just a hair bit longer.
If you go to his civil one with the topo on it,
Mhm.
that's the best one.
This one?
No, like the one with the retention tank. Yeah.
Okay.
You see the topo lines, the little squiggly things in the back driveway part? No, the rear
Oh,
part.
back here, yeah.
Those two topos, those, and then the next one, yeah, that one. During this design, to match that topo, they needed to be higher. So every foot that they're further south, because the lot slopes like this, so every foot that they're further south, that house has to be up. And so when we slid them 5 feet forward, at the garage entrance, basically is plumb. It's plumb to the sidewalk and everything, so we can't go lower, and we obviously don't want to go higher, because then the relationship with the street gets impacted. So when we scooch them forward, the radius from the rear entrance into the garage gets a little bit more comfortable. There's still a little bit of a slope back there. I don't know if that answers specifically your question or not.
So it lengthens the driveways and improves the turning radii into those garages because of that increased driveway leading to the individual garages.
Is it long enough to park a car behind the garage?
It's 40.
It's 40 something.
I mean,
feet.
without,
It's 43 feet.
I mean, again,
43 feet from
all the numbers aren't here. I'm just asking.
And a long car is like 20.
Yeah.
So you could do two tandem cars almost.
The parking bays are not signed about parking, but I believe that there's a specific amount of time that people can park on street, not more than 72 hours or something like that. So like the homeowners couldn't rely on parking on street and like leaving vehicles or campers or anything like that, because they'd be subject to the same rules every other street in town is subject to.
Said another way, it could alleviate the possibility that people would try to park a car
All day,
behind the
every day.
garage and obstruct flow out the driveway in the older version.
Right, this does
I
provide.
mean, it gives
yeah.
more, there's more room.
Yeah, there's more, yeah.
That is absolutely true. And the not incorporation documents, but like essentially Habitat buyers are led through training on how to be a homeowner, how to maintain a home, how to care for a home, and all the things that go along with homeownership. And as part of the documents that create this subdivision, it will require that the garages be maintained for parking. I believe I said it in my findings, but essentially, I know that that's a concern. As you build a garage, especially a single-car garage, it becomes a bedroom, it becomes storage, that sort of thing. So the garages will be maintained for vehicle parking.
How do you keep people from using their garage for storage?
The same way you do in all other subdivisions.
You
Neighbors,
don't.
I guess. I mean, it's.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, you can't
Okay.
really, but,
You can keep it from being a bedroom, kind of.
right, right. So it's, I guess it's like all other subdivisions where there's that sort of condition of approval or that sort of assumption or those sorts of things in CCNRs and HOAs,
But
you
you
know.
can't really do anything.
Yeah, you know, the Habitat is essentially their mortgage holder. So in a way, they have a scoosh bit more than a typical bank, but not really, right? So it will be clear that those are intended for that purpose. But there, as Ms. McCracken pointed out, there is technically some room that someone could park back there, but that's not the intention.
Anybody else have any questions? I guess that's a no. Russell, where'd you go? Russell, on Michael's screen, do you have any questions? Okay, so let's move on to the public comment. And first of all, I will call on Brooke Clifford, and then Cliff Williams, and then Norman Hale. And you have 5 minutes each.
Good evening. I don't have COVID. I just had long COVID for about 2 months, and I just don't want to get it again, so I'm masked. It's a pleasure to meet you and be with you this evening, and I appreciate your attention to detail regarding this Habitat for Humanity development. I want to mention that Aaron Anderson has been very helpful and has given me a lot of good information. I've learned a lot, good and bad, but I have learned a lot. And also I wanted to express my appreciation to Amy Gunter. She has just been fantastic and has been, again, very informative, and all of the neighbors are really grateful for her assistance in understanding just what we have. I really and truly believe that all of the neighbors support support Habitat for Humanity, and they also realize that there is a needed housing crisis here in Oregon. So with that said, we want to welcome our new neighbors into our neighborhood. And I'm just really grateful to Habitat for Humanity and also to the architectural firm for listening to our concerns about the design of the project. Williamson Way is really a unique neighborhood in that every home that you see on this diagram, and I think I think I counted something like 26 homes, they all have a porch in the front. And it's amazing how this porch really offers just a real feeling of security. You can go out and you can be within the porch. It has slatted railings, which you saw in the diagram. And also I want you to know that the architects actually have redone the drawing. They were just working today, and the drawings that you saw today I hadn't seen yet. So they have really been working hard. But the porch aspect is so important to Williamson Way, and it will be important to the homeowners of these townhomes, because the townhome owners are going to be able to have a truly wonderful home to live in, and that porch is truly going to make just a real difference to them. And it also is going to allow them to capture and to take advantage of the value of the homes that are on Williamson Way. Because our homes are special, and people move into Williamson Way simply because of the neighborhood. I'm not sure if you've ever gone to Williamson Way or not, but the CCRs say that you can't turn your garage into a bedroom. You're supposed to park either in your garage or in your parking area, in your driveway. They say that you shouldn't have a fence in the front yard. And believe it or not, it creates such a clean neighborhood. It creates a very quiet neighborhood. And then you have the patios, which then you have people having their lawn furniture behind. You have children's toys behind. You have just a really clean looking neighborhood.
And there's also, I'm Cliff Williams,
He's my next door neighbor.
literally. And what I was going to say is, it's really nice. I've been here 4 years. I was born and raised here, and went to Bend for 30 years and came back. And always wanted to live in, since I was like 8 years old, I wanted to live in this town. This is a cool place. Anyway, what's really nice now is we have children playing.
Yeah.
There was no children 4 years ago. There weren't any, and nobody went out to play basketball, or there was nothing. So we play in the streets. Kids get to play in the streets. They actually cross from their place across the street, and they're playing baseball. They're playing whatever. And so we have the kids coming, and we have babies now, and things like that. And so that's really nice. Now here's something really important. What's that? Oh, the baby's not here. No, the baby's not here. Right, the baby's not here. But he's an extremely smart guy back here, though. Where I was kind of leading with this, okay, when they mentioned the slope of this whole thing, and it's kind of they're right. I mean, it's not the most easy thing to do, because it's not just, here it is, nice and flat, and it's just, so it does have that slope. And they're doing a good job of taking care of that. Something that I noticed tonight is that they're doing a good job of seeing that you don't want these kids coming down that slope right to that road where I'd say 90% of the people who drive through our places will be passing theirs every time. And some of these people are doing 30 miles an hour in what should be 10 miles an hour. We can't have these kids running out in that street. And so by putting that, the front porches in there might help, so that the kids just aren't focused only on catching their toy or whatever it is and not paying attention to what's coming down the street. So, but to me, that's an important thing, and I think that they're really getting it there and doing that. And at the same time, if I were here another time with you guys, I would explain there are some people who are literally 30, 40 miles an hour through there, and it's an S, and they like to go, and they have a great time doing that. But now, in the last 4 years, we have great kids.
Yeah, we'll probably be back at some point in time talking about a speed limit through the neighborhood, because it is a problem at times. But the one really super thing about this location is that it is also 1 block away from North Mountain Park. And that is really a benefit for this location. This is an excellent location for children to be at. And I also wanted to thank the architects for basically changing the roof line on that shed roof on Building B. And it's really, these are going to be fairly large buildings. And so by changing the roof line and by adding that porch trim, it's made a big difference, I think, in how those buildings are going to affect our neighborhood. So does anyone have any questions of us? Okay, well.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. You've got my email.
Norman
or-
Hale is the next person up,
Thank you.
Thank you.
and then John
Thank you very
Fields.
Thank you for having us. My name is Norman Hale. I live at 456 Williamson. We're the house right next to the empty lot. We've lived there about a year and a half. When we bought the house, we were told it was mixed commercial residential. And we were aware of the properties behind us, and they were good neighbors, osteo strong, and I thought we can live with that. Had we known that there were going to be 4 large units next to us, we probably would not have bought the property. So we feel in some ways like we've been kind of sideswiped. It's going to make a huge difference to our space. I'm not opposed to low-income housing, and I'm not opposed to density. I am kind of opposed to the fact that it was a bit of a surprise. I really didn't know anything about it until the utility locator came with his paint gun. And I've got to believe that somebody knew about this before that. And it would have been nice to let the people in the neighborhood know that that was in the offing. But I recognize that state law allows the rezoning. So there's nothing we can do about that. I have some questions, though. I'd like to know what deed restricted means. I would like to get an idea. Oh, and I wanted to thank Amy. I thought that her design was really reflective of the things we talked to her about. I feel like it was kind of last minute. It was all done, a lot of it was done this afternoon, but it got done. But I would like to know what deed restricted means. I'd like to know what the schedule is for the building, if both buildings are going to be built simultaneously or separately. Habitat is not the fastest builder. We're going to be living with construction for, I estimate, 2 years probably, which will not be pleasant. And then something else came up tonight. I saw on the site plan this property called Falcon Heights, which I assume is zoned the same way that the property next to us was. Can Falcon Heights be rezoned without notice, also for low-income housing? I don't know if you can answer that question, but that's a pretty important question to us because it borders on the back, borders on the back of our property. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm
John Fields.
I live at 845 Oak Street.
Asking questions?
Just didn't want you to walk off without knowing that probably those questions can be answered, a lot of them by planning staff. Aaron.
We should make arrangements to talk tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, are we in a position to answer those questions? Technically?
To a degree.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. Okay.
We ready?
Please go ahead.
Okay. You know, I have been involved with Habitat. This is, I think we're at House 88 in the Rogue Valley. And I volunteered on House 6, it was like 30 years ago. And I kind of shifted from actually contractors, shifted from doing the actual supervising volunteers and construction to doing planning actions. And we've done, because of obviously land prices, we have to work to put more compact, more urban attached houses, just make those lots handle more housing units. The first house I worked on was in Eagle Point. We bought a lot, quarter-acre lot for $14,000. It had sidewalks, utilities up to it, and the house cost us $60,000 to build. The whole complexion of the cost of construction, everything. It's been 20 years since we've been able to get a lot in Ashland. We've been scrounging and trying to make something happen, and we built a couple of the last ones were across the street, across from the park, and Now we were doing 2 units over in Beach Creek. We possibly will be doing another 5 units in the next phase of Beach Creek. We have these 4 units, so over the next 3 years, hopefully we'll have 11 new Habitat families in Ashland. The deed restriction, the Habitat is really unusual in terms of affordable housing buildings, that it is owner occupied housing. And they basically gain equity over the 30 years they own it. If they sell out earlier than that, they just get the rate of inflation. They get a very minimal return on it. At 30 years, they own it full and outright. But typically, we've only, of the 88 houses, we've only taken 1 house back. And it wasn't sold, it was just due to basically just changing life situations where they had to let go of it. So the Senate, not the Senate bill, but the Oregon revised statute, that there's really a response to the housing crisis we have, is allow us to come into E1, and if we can, the burden of proof of creating that it's truly affordable, that it allows us to take the E1 land. And when you look at this lot location, it's right adjacent to the residential. It's a great transition, a little more density. If you think of what strictly E1 there could have been a 35-foot blank wall right on the property line. A wood shop, so in terms of impact and everything, it's a good blend. I think it's a really good thing. So there's really, sounds like there's a lot of support for it, so I don't have to go on and on. And it takes an incredible lot of work to make Habitat houses happen. Speaking to how long it takes to build, I think it's going to take us, because we have several things going on, it'll take us a year before we're going to probably be able to start on these. But I would say we'll probably build them 2 units at a time, and I would say it'd take us 7 to 8 months to do each. And there'll be overlap. I think once we get it framed, we'll be able to move on to the second pair. Okay, that's.
So typically, wouldn't you build the one that is adjacent to the property line first? So you build from the inside out?
The ones that are most accessible build out, We'll build the one deepest into the.
Right, deepest in the lot, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Anybody have any questions?
I'll conclude with that, so.
Thank you very
I haven't
much.
been here, but I haven't been to a planning commission since way before COVID, so it's like I don't even know anybody or anything.
We're all different. Jason Rule and Mary Devlin. Is that anywhere near correct?
Rail.
Rail.
German. Close.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jason Rail. Thanks for hearing me, and I appreciate the work you working with our neighbors and the upgrade additions that you made. Look great. Yeah, this is a very special neighborhood. I moved here 4 years ago to work at Ashland Hospital, and we rented for 2 years behind this neighborhood and waited to buy in this neighborhood for 2 years. So it's definitely important that it keeps a unified look. And 2 of you have been there, 5 have not. I encourage you during daylight to go drive through and look at this neighborhood. It's very clean, it's unified, and I think all those changes help with that drastically, so I appreciate that. The one additional change that we had brought up was there are pillars in the front that all of our houses have that look exactly like this initial. It'd be nice if that could also be added. The proposal is more of a 4x6 or something, but that is how all of the pillars are in our neighborhood, so that would be my one additional ask. And as far as the lawn, I guess I'd also recommend some hardscaping in the front as well. Currently, Ashland has a lawn replacement program, and it would seem like adding additional maintenance, additional cost for the owners, also in a town that is currently sponsoring a lawn replacement program. So my recommendation for landscaping when the time comes would be more hardscaping than actual lawn that needs to be maintained. And I believe that's it. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mary Devlin?
Hi, okay. Where's this red button? Oh, just that. Great, thanks. Hi, I'm Mary Devlin, and I live at 456, next door to the project. One thing I noticed in looking at the information I had today is that there's a discrepancy, and this is going to be an easy fix, I think, saying that the sidewalk in the front will be, the same size as our current 5-foot sidewalk. Doesn't say it's 5 foot, because in the plans, it says it's going to be a 6-foot sidewalk that's built. So somewhere there needs to be just an adjustment to make sure they're the same size, I would think, same width. Thanks for noting that. The only other thing I want to say is echo that this development is welcome. We do support Habitat for Humanity, know its importance. I hadn't realized there hadn't been action on that front in Ashland for so long, so good. And we appreciate all the attention that's being paid to making the development fit with the neighborhood. That's really important, and I'm sure you find that with every development that happens, unless it's a freestanding thing. So we appreciate your attention to that and their attention to that, and look forward to, in, well, 2 or 3 years, seeing some new neighbors. Anyway, thank you for having us today, and we appreciate all the work you're doing on this.
Thank you very much. 1 minute. Would you please give your name and address?
Brooke Clifford, 463 Williamson Way, Ashland, Oregon. One thing that we're a little confused on is the fact that that there could be conditions offered to this approval for the housing development. And in talking with Aaron, he said that, for instance, the buildings could be built and then the buildings would just have all siding on them, and the cedar look wouldn't have to be there. And so it's kind of like, I can't tell you, but I've seen 3 or 4 different designs already for the building. And I was wondering, could we, there are certain things that we really find important, and could we offer conditions to this design, just to ensure that we really have the cedar siding? It's going to be so beautiful, if there's the lap siding and then the cedar on top. But Aaron told me the other day that, this project could be built with all just regular lap siding, and it would be okay. It wouldn't be an exception, and there wouldn't be anything our neighborhood could do about it. Is that true?
That is true. The Planning Commission does not regulate siding for the house.
Okay,
in
well,
terms of
then I
detail.
would like to offer some conditions, if that would be acceptable.
It would not. We don't, the Planning Commission has certain rules and regulations that we need to follow. They're laid out in the conditions of approval that Aaron went through at the beginning. And we do not get into siding or color or things like that.
So this would mean that,
You've
for
been-
instance, the porch railings, they could be omitted then? The slatting on the porches?
Since
Or
they've,
would that be an exception?
since they've made it a part of their presentation today, then that becomes part of the application.
Okay.
And so the things that they mentioned today become part of the application. And one of the conditions that we have is that everything that's in the application has to hold. So
Okay, So would that mean then that the cedar shake siding would maintain on the upper level on level 2? And the lapping would be on the bottom then? I guess I have to turn to Aaron to see, I guess.
If it gives you any comfort in the
Yes.
in the findings, conclusions, and orders in paragraph 6, it states, "The applicant's proposal is detailed in plans which are on file at the Department of Community Development and by their reference are incorporated herein as if set out in full." So I think that's to the chair's point, that what they propose is what
Okay,
is
I'm
what is
not, I'm not
approved.
suggesting that Habitat is not going to follow through, with their promises, but it is something that was rather disturbing when I talked to Aaron and he said, well, if they just put on all siding, there isn't anything that, you just can't do anything about it.
Your 1 minute is up.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Staff want to say something?
So in addressing the question in terms of material choice, I'd probably start by saying an existing single-family subdivision of single-family residential doesn't have site design standards in terms of what materials are used for siding, windows, color of buildings. This project being utilizing the state allowance for affordable housing has to have clear and objective standards in terms of applying to affordable housing the development proposals. So one thing I will confirm that Commissioner Perkinson identified is that all applicants' proposals are conditions of approval, but there is always slight modifications at the point of building permit compared to a conceptual plan that is approved by the Planning Commission. And what we look for is substantial conformance with the proposal. So if, for instance, instead of 3-bedroom units, they came in with 4-bedroom units where the garage was a bedroom, that would not be in substantial conformance with the floor plans in this. But if they came in with a different siding material, that would likely be considered in conformance with the planning approval. The number of units, the building envelopes, the trees and the sidewalk, all of those elements are regulated through the conditions, but not necessarily the color of the buildings or the siding type used, so long as it is in compliance with building code.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. So don't the so the CCNRs for that neighborhood don't necessarily affect this subdivision?
That's my understanding. To a degree with the parking, they're within this subdivision.
Yeah,
and so
there are CCNRs that affect this property, but they're a private agreement that the city doesn't get involved in administrating. So for instance, I believe there's a clause that says that any building shall be approved by an architectural committee, and then it's named people and their assigns.
Yeah. You don't have anything to do with that.
The city's not going to take it upon ourselves to make sure that that architectural committee is stood up and is reviewing the plans. I would also point out that those agreements say that the sidewalk has to be installed 12 months after the property is subdivided, and obviously that hasn't happened. So as much as there are CCNRs that govern the property, we're aware of them, but it's not something that the city administers.
But there are CCNRs, and there's assuming that there's a committee, then they can, and if there's not, I guess I'm trying to give you some information. You can have an architectural review committee within your homeowners association.
But to be clear, the CCNRs, for instance, have a prohibition on front yard fences. Our land use regulation has no such prohibition on front yard fences. So if down the road, an applicant who owned one of those houses came and applied for deer fencing to meet our standards, we would be compelled to issue that permit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to get a little clarification on that. Pardon?
I was speaking into the mic.
Oh.
Doug.
Hi. I came away from this discussion thinking that the CCNRs for the existing development that is that neighborhood did not apply here, because there was discussion about Habitat for Humanity having some enforcement capabilities as mortgage holder in order to ensure that certain things got done. So that being the scenario, am I simply mistaken and that the CCNRs encompass this property even though it was never developed?
So to be clear, I'm not an attorney. I have read the document. It talks about Lot 1 being the only commercial lot in the subdivision. So I would presume that to mean that it is governed by these regulations. But there's some sloppiness in the language too, where it initially discusses the commercial lot, and then it goes on to talk about the architectural committee approving construction on all lots. So if there's a specific question about, well, does the architectural committee have jurisdiction on just the residential lots or the employment lots, they would need to consult with a land use attorney.
CCNRs encumber the property, but we don't govern those encumbrances.
With that, I am going to close the public hearing and close the public record.
Rebuttal to,
Rebuttal, sorry. I take that back.
I don't think I had the microphone on my whole previous presentation, so hopefully it picked up on your mic because I can be loud. So I'll address a few of the comments that were received in rebuttal. The city standards call for a 6-foot sidewalk, so that is what is proposed. The adjacent neighborhood, I believe, is a 5.5, so it will widen slightly to the 6 feet, which meets today's standards versus what was proposed or poured in that previous subdivision. As far as the deed restriction, I can't speak exactly to the terminology of a deed restriction, but they are notarized documents that are recorded onto the deed of the property. And so as the titles change and as the deeds of the properties exchange hands, in the case of a deed restricted property, there's an income qualification portion to it that requires that if this sells, the buyer has to also be income qualified in order to qualify for that affordable housing provision. So essentially, when you go by the property, a deed restriction is a red flag in a way that says, notice there's something here. What does that mean? It means you must qualify for affordable housing and meet that 80% area median income. So each lot will have a restriction notification on the deed, and then there's specific terminology that's provided regarding affordable housing specifics. Mr. Fields spoke generally to the schedule of the construction. And then as far as like the pillar piece goes, there was a postcard that was sent out that had an original, a preliminary design on it. It was sent to some of the neighbors, and that had like a widened column. And that was not proposed, mainly because it's an economy of scale. It's a design thing. These are, it's something that we can't repeat in all Habitat homes, and so we are trying to use elevations that are similar to what we've done in other situations. And I just wanted to answer Mr. Rule's question. And then my last two things would be that the materials and the elements that are proposed here are intended to be carried through. I keep saying cedar style, but really it's a cement board or a hardy board material that will be used as those siding materials, so it's not like cedar shake shingles. There are architectural composition roofs proposed, but if a roofing contractor out there wants to donate some 60-year metal roofs, to come and find us, we will gladly put 60-year metal roofs on it. And then the last thing is that their condition number 7B, the pedestrian connectivity, it's recommending a 5-foot in width concrete, asphalt, brick, or durable surface walkway, which 5 feet is atypically large for a pathway leading up to a house. 36 to 42 feet is pretty common, or I'm sorry, inches. 3 feet to 4 feet is common. 5 feet's really large. So I would ask that that condition be dialed back to be more similar to what's common, which is about, I think, 42 inches. So that would be my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, sure, go for it.
Yeah.
I did
Oh, about the lot and how it affects,
I have a loud voice, but I should still get recorded. Your comment about the pillars.
yes.
Request of the neighbors as far as maintaining continuity of the neighborhood for, I think it's called a bungalow pillar or
Yeah.
that wide base. I didn't hear you say, yes, you could accommodate, or no, it could not be accommodated.
We are not accommodating
You're
it.
not planning.
We are not planning to accommodate it. And not all houses in that neighborhood have that pillar. They almost all have like a 6x6 or an 8x8 post and those pillars on their porches. They're sort of a mix, but that is not the proposal. I just wanted to address that there was this postcard that went out that included it. What you saw tonight with the straight post with the widened base at just the footing is the type of pillar proposed.
Just for information's sake, I drove the neighborhood, and the vast majority of the houses that I passed did have those columns on their front porches. There may have been different columns elsewhere, but it was a consistent design element.
Right.
And so for continuity in the neighborhood, if it was possible without blowing the budget out, it could be considered, I would hope.
I can say we have considered it, and it was eliminated
Okay,
due to budget issues, yeah.
got it.
Go ahead.
Hi, Amy. I have one question. I notice on the revised drawing, it appears the pedestrian sidewalk doesn't go all the way to the south of the property line. Is that intended to do that on Russell Street, a Rogue Place? It stops at the driveway.
So the driveway will have, the name is what it's called, the apron? The apron has a sidewalk behind it, and then that will essentially terminate right at just past the edge of the sidewalk. So the sidewalk will go right to the property line. I think there is a sidewalk it's connecting to the south. So
Okay.
it will connect to what's happening on the south.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, there's a
It
sidewalk.
didn't reflect that on that revised drawing, so I was
Yeah.
just curious. Thank you.
And I should address, I've asked for clarification. It's our understanding that Lot 1 was excluded from the subdivision in the CCNRs. It went through a whole lawsuit. There was specific, there was a mediation, and that lot was like specifically excluded from like the remainder of the development, is how we understand it. And as far as how Habitat controls things, it's that that's how they have always done things with all of their homeowners. They stay very involved in their furthering of their lives. We have a family services group that stays involved. They perform social services. We have yearly parties 2 or 3 times a year for all the Habitat families. So there's much more involvement with Habitat in these homeowners' lives as they move on in their homeownership journey.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
We still don't have any control over it, but thank you for the
Right.
clarification.
You're welcome. Okay.
But just one further clarification to your example of the roofs. The decision on the porch columns was purely economical. If someone donated funds or donated columns, there would not be an objection to including them in the design.
Every dollar that goes towards the Habitat drives down the ultimate dollar per square foot construction costs, which is our goal, is to not have really high construction costs, because the Habitat homes are assessed at the market rate of the neighborhood. They are not assessed at like a lower rate. And so if people donate time, services, materials, construction expertise, that sort of thing, we will incorporate wherever we can.
Okay, now I'm going to close the public hearing and close the record. No. Thank you anyway. Okay, deliberations and discussion. Brandon?
I have one comment before a motion is made. Staff will need a copy of the exhibits presented this evening for consideration. I believe the applicant provided them to each of the commissioners, but there are no copies available for staff.
This is what you're talking
Correct.
about. Okay.
And so my understanding is that our recommended condition of approval that all proposals of the applicant be conditions of approval would be predicated on the exhibits presented by the proposer this evening and during the hearing, which are now part of the application. So I just wanted to clarify that and ensure that we had a copy to incorporate into the record. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, deliberations among the commissioners. Thoughts?
I just want to say how much I appreciate the opportunity that this creates to take for a well-established program like Habitat for Humanity to be able to have the willingness and the fortitude to turn what is in essence a commercial lot into an extension of the residential environment, honoring the spirit and intent of the neighbors and supporting the broader goal of creating affordable housing. I think it's great. And so I commend everyone for their role in what you've done. I think it's great.
You have the legislature to thank for this.
Then I'll thank them too.
Gary?
So I think probably Brandon or Aaron can answer this. The question about whether the lots, as you go around into Falcon Heights, like the next lot behind this one, can that then now end up being a residential development?
So it can be affordable
Right.
residential development. The allowance under the Senate or the House bill was for affordable housing to be allowed as an outright permitted use on all commercial property. I'd note that this property at roughly 0.59 acres otherwise could have been developed as a 25,000 square foot commercial building.
Right.
And the properties on Falcon, the subdivision that was done there and utilities installed, was in anticipation of commercial / mixed use
Right,
development.
all those lots are designed.
Correct.
The dimensions of those lots are much less flexible and to going to affordable. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Would
I
you
wasn't
like to
prepared to
make
make
a
a motion yet, just a quick statement, which is that having actually enjoyed the experience of working with Habitat for Humanity a few too many years ago now and building out a couple of houses in Southern California, what I'm seeing here happening and that Habitat for Humanity, in a sense, feels like it's coming back to Ashland is a great thing. I think that there has been a lot of movement in this project in order to take the neighborhood's considerations into account. You can't take all of them into account typically, but nonetheless, it's a very strong attempt to blend in with the existing neighborhood and still meet some other goals, not the least of which is the 80% AMI as far as someone that's going to be able to live there. And also too, just to the neighbors that have attended here tonight, we often get people coming in who are very negative. And there are all kinds of reasons why they might be negative. It was nice to hear comments like, we're looking forward to welcoming our new neighbors. We're looking forward to having this be part of the neighborhood. That's just a lovely thing to hear. Sure.
Would somebody like to make a motion? Or put forward some sort of ideas for a motion?
So I move to approve planning action.
PT,
I move to approve planning action PAT2 2024000047. And with the, including the conditions of approval and findings developed by planning staff.
and on our, at our chairs tonight? This one, not the urgent one. We got
The one that we got given tonight, yes. Sorry.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve planning action PAT2 2024-00047 based on the conditions and findings and conclusions that were before us tonight. at our seat when we got here, not the original ones we got. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I will,
Do we have to incorporate anything in regards to the sidewalk changing, or can that just be?
It's not changing.
The sidewalk standard per code stipulates a 5-foot pedestrian connection to the street.
Yeah, if we're talking about the connection from the homes to the sidewalk that Amy brought up, that is specified as a 5-foot width.
And as far as,
There's that, but the one that I was referring to.
The
uh,
is
6.
coming from the existing 5-foot sidewalk along the street, Williamson.
yes,
And
and,
6 foot in front of Williams' house.
you know, two things I'll note on that. One, the street improvements, including the sidewalk, the 6-foot standard is established by code and is what's proposed by the applicant. But as far as the meander, so that it is not an abrupt edge to an existing 5-foot standard, would be required as part of that public works permit. The other public improvement that came up this evening in terms of the lighting standard, the applicant's assertion that a residential lighting standard is appropriate will be relayed to the Public Works Department as well.
okay, so now, Michael, will you do a roll call?
Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Nauer. Commissioner Kincairn.
Yes?
Commissioner Herron.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner McCracken Jane.
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Okay, so we have approved this application. We are now moving on to open discussion.
One moment, we didn't get the Zoom vote. Did you get that? Okay.
You did that first.
Pardon me.
Okay, so we're moving on to the part of our meeting called open discussion. Does anybody have anything to talk about?
Just want to remind everybody to get their ethics paperwork done, which I haven't done yet.
So you don't get charged a fee.
$250 a day.
Wow. Okay.
And I have one open discussion item. I mentioned at the onset of this meeting that the planned study session item has, we don't have speakers for that item. So staff will look at alternative items to bring forward before the commission as well.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. And so unfortunately, that doesn't leave a lot of time for an exhaustive preparation of packet materials, but we'll do what we can to come forward with an item and forward it for your consideration.
There has to be something else in the comp plan that we can talk about.
I got sort of a prioritized list that I put together on my own, but it's sort of.
Right.
See what works.
Yeah, and we also have a number of long-range projects that status updates are coming due, so might be another option that we can bring forward.
Okay. So we will have something in 2 weeks. So keep it on your calendar. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.